everyone, welcome to my next video. In this video, we are going to be using MetaBox front-end submissions to pre-fill our custom post type. In my case, it's going to be a review post type that we have. So here's the example that I have set up, but we're going to walk through how to get this set up. So it's going to allow me to go through and enter a name here. Just put some pre-filled text in there. We'll do today's date. It's already preset to 5 stars, and we'll select a service. We'll just go Windows, and I'm going to hit submit here. You can see it redirects me to my home page. And now if we go to our backend and look at reviews, you can see I have one pending here. So if I go ahead and click into it, you can see that it's pre-filled all of my data here, including my relationship. So this is what we are going to get set up here today in this video. I'm just going to now delete this one, and we'll come back through this whole process, and I'll explain it more. So the very first thing you want to do, if you haven't done it already, is get MetaBox and MetaBox all-in-one installed on your site. You can see I'm using version 1.13.5 for MetaBox all-in-one, 3.9 for Oxygen. So first thing we would do is come over to MetaBox, and we would go to our post types and create new post type. But because I already have this in here, I'm just going to walk through the one I have. So I just set my plural name to reviews, singular name to review, and my slug to reviews. Do note that I did have to manually add the S on the end if that is something that you want to do. I did in my case, so I set that up by manually putting the S in there. Otherwise, it just pulls the singular name, and you do not want to change that after the fact. So make sure you do that in the front end. Then I went over to advanced, and I just set my menu icon here. And other than that, I left everything else as is, and I just hit update or save. Next, I also created a service post type. Again, I did the same exact thing by naming it, and again I added the S on the slug to make it plural, and I set my menu icon, and then I clicked save. Again, I did not change anything else at this time. Next, I came over to my custom fields, and I created new, and first one I did was review group. Again, you can name this what you want, but I like doing the name of what it's for and a group. So in here you can see I have 3 fields added, but before we do that, I'm going to jump over to settings. All I did is I changed my location is set to post type, and instead of post here, I set it to reviews, and then clicked update. Next, come back over to fields, and I added a text area field and just labeled it as review. And I did not change anything else here in either of the 2 tabs besides renaming it. Next, I chose review date, and here I did change my save format to month, day, year. Additionally, I did set another option here, a date picker option, my date format to month, day, and year. And this will allow us to read it properly on the front end. I'm here in the US, and this is how our dates typically look. So that's why I wanted to set that up like that. If you want your date set up differently, you can change this format here. But I did go ahead and add that as well. And that, again, just makes sure that my date shows up as month, day, year, which is common in the US here. Next, I did a range custom field. And here I named it as star rating. I put in my item description, which I said choose 1 to 5 stars. I set my default to 5, my minimum value to 0, my max value to 5, and my step to 1. And I believe that is all we had for that one as well. So once you have those 3 fields, which again are let me minimize them so we can see them all here, is a text area, a date field, and a range field. And again, I set those on my reviews post type. So once we have those set, I can go ahead and save that. And I'm gonna leave this open just so we can come back to it. So I'm just gonna right click and open another tab. And I went ahead and made another group and called this service group. And here I just have a text field and a text area just for my service heading. Again, nothing special, just renamed the label, and same with the description. These aren't anything you have to add, and I'm not even going to be using them in here, but I'm just showing you that I did also add a service group here. And again, I set that to my post type of services. So the next thing we need to do, now that we've already set up our custom post types which is reviews and services, and then we have our custom fields, which we set up for both our review and services. So next, what we are going to do is come over to relationships. And again, I'm just going to open this into a new tab. And you can see that I have two here. And the reason we have two is because we have it set up to go both ways. So I'm just going to right click and open both of these so that I have them both open here. So in the first one, you would go ahead and click new relationship. In our object type, we'd have post, which is automatically selected. And then in our post type, we want to hit our drop down here and choose reviews. And this is saying we are setting our relationship from reviews to services. And next I'm going to click on my meta box here on both of these, and I have these set to context side, priority low, and style default, which I believe these are the default settings. Next, I'll click on field for both of these. And I did add a label here, and I did add a placeholder here. And you do want to make sure that you do add a label and placeholder, as that will just fill in some of the blank area so people know what they're doing. Once we get to the front end to look at everything, I will show you that. But that is going to be our first relationship we have here, which again is going from reviews to services. Then in our next one, we're going to do exactly the opposite. So we're going to go from services to reviews. And again, I did all of the same settings here. For my meta box, I just left those as default. And then in my fields, I did go ahead and add my label and placeholder again. And we can go ahead and hit update. So now we have both of those created and saved. And the reason we have both is so that it's a two-way relationship. So that way, if I add a new review and choose a service, when I go to the actual service page, it's going to show that it has a relationship with that review. So it's going to work both ways. So that's why we have both of them and just setting up the opposite from what each of them are. So one goes from service to reviews, and the other goes from reviews to services. So now quickly, let's review. We've gone in and created our custom post types, which were reviews and services. We created our custom field groups for reviews. That was the important one. And we created our relationships, and we made them go both ways, from reviews to services and from services to reviews. So now the next part is we want to go over to pages, and we're going to add new. So again, I'm just going to right click and open in a new tab. And we're going to call this leave a review. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish right away. And I'm going to have to hit refresh just so I get my edit with oxygen button. We're going to jump in and edit this. So what I'm going to do is open my structure panel, and I'm going to add a section. I'm going to add a heading. I'm going to add a div, and inside the div, I'm going to add a shortcode. So let me expand over here. I'll just expand all. So again, I have a section, I have a heading, I have a div, and a shortcode. So I'll work my way down. I'm not going to change any spacing on my section right now. It's just as the default has some padding in there. Normally I would change that to match the styling of my site, but I'm not going to in this tutorial. For my heading, I'm just going to change this to leave a review. And again, this will be my H1. On my div, I'm going to set my width to 100%. And I am going to put a little spacing above it. So I'm just going to go 1.2 M just to give us some space there. And next I'm going to come over to my shortcode. And now here, what I'm going to also do before we even put my shortcode in is I'm going to set my width to 100% as well. Now if we come back to the primary tab, what we are going to actually paste in here, I'm going to pull from a document I have here. So I'll quickly walk through the different options we have here, and I'll do it on the blank version first. So first we have our MetaBox front-end form ID. So what this field is going to be what post type we're pulling from or what group we're pulling from. So in our case, we are pulling from our review group. And now if I go back here, you can see, I apologize, here's my review group. I have my ID here, which is review group. So that's what we would be pasting in here. And you can see I have that here. Next, I do also have my service and reviews underscore relationships underscore 2. So again, I pulled that from my services to reviews. So we have services and reviews here. And note that this portion you have to add manually. And if we wanted to change it, instead of having a to and we wanted to have the from, we could change that right here. And we could also just put in a comma as well and add the from as well. And I'll show you that on the front end once we do it. Our post fields are going to be what fields we want to include. So I have my title, I have my reviewer full name, which actually we're not using anymore. We have, originally I had that in place of title, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We have our review field, our review date, and our rating. Next, we have our label title. So instead of the field showing up as title, we can rename that. So it's going to show up as reviewer full name in our instance. So you can put whatever you'd like there. For our submit button, we can choose the text that we want to show there, which we are choosing submit new review. Next, we have whether or not we can edit it, and I set it to false. So that means once they add their review, they're not going to be able to edit that review at all. I also have allow delete set to false because we don't want them to be able to delete it as well. Next is going to be our post status, which I have set to pending. And again, the reason I'm doing pending is so that as the site owners, we have a chance to review it before it actually gets posted. This is a way just to prevent spam and any, I guess spam would be the best option, because we don't want to, just filter out poor reviews of us. We just want to filter out spam. Next, we can choose where we redirect to. So normally I would set this just to our reviews page, but in this case, I don't have that built out yet. So I'm just redirecting to our homepage and our confirmation, which we end up actually not seeing once you submit it because it just redirects so fast. but we can set that as well, which I have set to thank you for submitting a review. So those are the different options I have chosen here. I'm going to go to MetaBox documentation. So for their front end submissions, here are all the different options we can choose here. And it just tells you a little bit more. So you can actually add Google reCAPTCHA if you want to. You can use a lot of different field types. You can use the content of just your typical WordPress page. You can use thumbnails, your excerpt, a lot of different options here, but I'm only using a few of those. And again, I walked through what we're using here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to come back to our shortcode here, and I'm just going to paste that in, and we should see it start to fill in there. And you'll see I'm getting this error here. And I believe the reason it's actually giving me this error is on my custom fields where I chose my date range and we set our date format. This is actually using a JavaScript library that MetaBox uses to set this. So I believe that's why we're getting this error. You can just go ahead and ignore it if you see it. So you can see we have our title field, which is now renamed as reviewer full name. We have our review field. We have our review date field, our star rating with our label of choose 1 to 5 stars, and our service, and it says select service. So this is where our labels on our relationships are coming in. When I said you want to make sure you have those, the actual label is showing up on the left-hand side, and then the placeholder is select service. And then our button down here says submit new review. And again, that's all because we set those within our shortcode here. We can set those to whatever we want that to be. In my case, I said submit new review. So what I'm gonna do here first is just click save. And I'm gonna jump to the front end just so we can take a look. So you can see that everything is set up kind of going left to right instead of stacked. So what I did is I actually just inspected this and used CSS to go through everything. And to make life easier for you guys, I actually have all this CSS right here. And I'll walk through kind of step by step what we're doing with all this. So I am gonna just go ahead and copy all of this. And I'm gonna come back over to here, and we are going to go to style sheets in our backend here, and we're going to add a style sheet, and we'll call this just CSS. You can name it whatever it is you want. You can see I already have one, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one just so we don't get confused. And with that open, I'm going to paste all of my CSS in. So the one thing you are going to have to change is your shortcode ID here. So if I go to my front end and I click inspect, let me drag this over so we can find that. So our shortcode ID is going to be -5-29. So let's go ahead and jump back to our builder here. And we said that was -5-29. So you can see I already changed our flex direction to columns instead of rows. So I'm just going to copy and paste this all the way down. And the reason I'm using the ID here from our shortcode is so that it's actually targeting just this front end submission form. Because if I don't use my shortcode ID, it's going to make these same changes to all of my front end submissions if I have more than one. Certainly, if you're going to have only one, you're not going to need that. But just for sake of future changes, I put that in there just so I know I'm only selecting this front end submission. So going down the list, we have first changed our flex direction, which again changed how it's stacked. So if I take that out, you can see it's going left to right because we're using rows instead of columns. I just preferred the stacked version. It looks a little bit better. Then I added a little bit of margin between my actual input and my title. Next, I styled my button. You can see here I made it green. I added some padding around it. I added some transition, some border radius, and I did remove the border because it does have one to start. Additionally, I added some hover effects, so you can see it gets a little bit darker there. And I also added cursor pointer so that I'm getting my pointer when we are hovering over that. Next, I made sure that I added some focus style. So, and that I'll show you on the front end. But I did go ahead and add an outline to that. And then the last thing I did is I had to change my flex direction on my button here because otherwise it was spanning the entire width. So if I go ahead and take that out, you can see it goes the full width, which I didn't like. So by adding my flex direction to row here on these classes, it allowed me to just make my button not go the full width. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And if we jump to the front end and hit refresh, you can see all of that styling has worked. And if you use your keyboard and navigate through here, you can see that it is actually adding focus to these and allowing us to just tab on through. And you can see when I get down to my button that I'm also getting my outline as well. So now let's go ahead and submit one. We did John Smith before. I'm going to do Jane Smith. My review date, we'll say it was the 1st. My star rating, I'm just going to change this so you can see it actually works correctly. And for services, I'm going to choose siding. And you can also tie it to multiple as well, which is really nice. So we'll do siding and roofing just so we can see how the relationships work. So I'm going to hit submit review. You can see it just takes us to our home page here. If I go back to leave a review, we can enter another one. So what I'm going to do is go back to our back end here, and we have this saved already. So I'm just going to go back to admin. And if we come over to reviews, again, we can see it's pending, which means that as the site owner, we are going to have to actually go ahead and publish it before it would actually show up. But it's going to pull in the name that we used for the title, and it makes our slug as follows. It fills in our actual review custom field, our date custom field. And again, you can see here's my date format that I set. So it's showing as month, day, and year. And I have my star rating, which is showing as 4 stars. And then if we come over to the right-hand side, you can see that our relationship is connecting to both siding and roofing. And one thing I do want to note is that you do have to actually publish this first. So again, you saw that I did hit publish. I'll just hit update. And now if we come over to services and we look at both siding and then roofing, you will see that it's connected to Jane Smith for that review. And again, if I go over to roofing, it will also show Jane Smith there as well. But as I mentioned just a moment ago, you do actually have to publish the review first in order for the relationship to show here, because if it's just pending, it's not going to fully connect. So let's go ahead and do one more. We'll choose our review date. We'll say it was 5 stars, and we'll go ahead and choose roofing again, just so you can see multiple reviews tied to one service. I'm going to hit submit. Again, it redirects us to our home page, and we didn't see that confirmation message just because it redirects so quickly. And now if I come back to our front end, and just so we can see here, I'm going to hit refresh. And you can see that it has another spot here, but it's not actually showing the name here. And that's what I was mentioning when it's still showing as pending. So if I go to this review now, we can see we have all our information here and it's connected to roofing. And when I hit publish, it's going to go ahead and update that now. So if I come over to my services, I'll just open that in a new window here and go to roofing, you can see that it is now connected here. So that's how we are going to use the front end submissions within MetaBox. We set up a handful of custom fields to allow us to do that. And in a previous video that I did, I set up how to make and style your reviews or testimonials. And I used a lot of these same fields. So you can go review that and figure out how to actually display this data, which I'm not doing in this video because my sole focus was the front end review, which again, we have set up to leave reviews and connected to another custom post type, which is our services, using bi-directional relationships. One thing I also wanted to add that I didn't mention earlier is that right now, if the form is blank and I hit submit new review, so you can see it let me submit a blank review that time. And now when I come back here to reviews, you can see I'm getting a no title and it's still pending. And everything is just blank here. So what we can do to actually prevent that is if we come over to MetaBox and our custom fields and our review group, if I go to my text area, I'm going to require that. And you can choose if you want to require these others as well. Granted, star rating is already pre-filled, so that one I don't think we have to set, but our date we do want to hit required on that too. And I'm going to hit update. And now if we go back to our front end and go to leave a review, you'll see now that we get this required star showing up as well. And if I go to click submit new review, you can see I'm getting my error saying please correct the highlighted below and try again. So now I actually have to enter information here. Granted, you will see that this is not required, but hopefully people would still fill that in. But that should prevent you from getting blank submissions. It's one thing I wanted to quickly add that I forgot to mention. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do have questions, go ahead and let me know. As I mentioned, when I was styling everything, I chose to use and just write CSS in a style sheet, as I found that easier than trying to use selector detector, which you can also use, but I just found it easier to just type out my CSS. I feel for me that that's faster just because I'm pretty proficient in CSS. So that's just one last thing I wanted to mention. Again, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions.